meta-gaming. From decisive strike in Dead by Daylight to the Black Knight harbored in Dark Souls. Metas define how games are played at the highest level, and BeamNG no exception. Over the years, this game has evolved in every possible way, and so has its meta. But what even is meta in BeamNG? Well, it's all about the cars, their tunes, and sometimes even driving backwards through time trials. Seriously, reversing your way to victory is the thing. So today we are diving into the unreal world of hardcore speedrunning to uncover what players are using to break even the toughest records. From the earliest days of BeamNG, players had already figured out the best vehicle for off-road and racing, and that vehicle was the Ibishu Pigeon. Nah, I'm just messing with you. The real legends were the Hirochi and their SBR4 and the Sunburst. For 6 long years, these two ruled BeamNG speedrunning. The SBR4, a monster. It could push up to 1400 horsepower effortlessly. And it wasn't just about raw power. This car had the legendary GTRX Aero Kit. This made it untouchable on high-speed tracks and through the game's fastest corners. Adding its incredible handling and you have got the perfect car for both casual drivers and speedrunners alike. It wasn't just the SBR4. The Sunburst was equally iconic for off-road racing. Lightweight, easy to tune and built to handle dirt paths like a dream. Together, these two cars didn't just dominate, they defined the early meta of BeamNG. For rally, well, the Hirochi Sunburst reigned supreme. The reason? Simple. It was an absolute joy to drive and incredibly easy to tune. Even in its default setup, it was solid, but with a few tweaks, it turned into a beast. Even after all these years, there is still debate about whether it's still top tier. Is the Sunburst still viable in today's meta? Some say yes, while others believe in power of newer vehicles. But one thing is for sure, back in the day, it was the obvious choice. Now let's talk crawl maps. Back when BeamNG first launched, there was only one vehicle that had the power and capacity to push through the toughest terrain, the Gavril D-Series. It was a steel beam monstrosity on wheels, built to conquer anything the maps threw at it. The D-Series held countless records on the hardest of crawl maps. It wasn't just about brute force, it had the perfect combination of durability, power and handling. So when it came to crawling over brutal obstacles, the D-Series was the undisputed champion. And the meta stayed perfectly stable until about 4 years ago, when a new and unique car was introduced, the FCV Vivace. This beauty didn't just break the mold, it defined the meta for one thing: rally. But why? Let's start with its size. The Vivace is shorter than the Sunburst, which makes it way more nimble. A longer car, like the Sunburst, tends to feel a bit heavy when flicking through the fast corners, but the Vivace, it handles them with ease. Then there is the tuning potential. This thing was leagues ahead of the Sunburst. With the right tweaks, it became an absolute beast on the track. But that's only part of the reason why it became so dominant. The real magic was its balance. The biggest problem with rally cars is its balance. You don't want to be fighting the car mid-jump. The Vivace nails that. Its weight distribution is near perfect, and after every jump or bump, it just lands like it's on rails. It doesn't get unsettled easily, and that's a game changer in off-road racing. Now, technically, the Sunburst and Vivace are pretty similar, but the Vivace just edges out the Sunburst in every category, and that's why the meta shifted. But that was just the first small change of many. About 2 years ago, two completely new vehicles were introduced: the Scintilla and the Rockbusher. The Rockbusher, as you might have guessed, was built for one thing: rockbusher. Whether it's very rough off-road, where neither the Vivace nor the Sunburst would survive, or straight up rock crawling, the Rockbusher was the answer. When compared to the D-Series, the Rockbusher isn't just better for crawl, it outshines it in every single way, especially in speed, since it can push out even more power. Its speed and stability made it the new king of off-road and rock crawling. and it's only getting more dominant as players perfect their setups. And now it's time for the ultimate jack of all trades, master of every single one, the Scintilla. This car instantly became the meta for almost everything in BeamNG. But why? Well, as I mentioned earlier, it's all about the tuning potential and raw power. With the right setup, this sleek beauty can push around 2300 horsepower. Compare that to the SBR4's 1400. It isn't even close. But that's not all. The Scintilla is lighter and features the full GTRX aero kit and of course nitro. It can handle much more nitro than the SBR4 without breaking a sweat. Right now this is the perfect racing vehicle, but there is still some debate over its starting setup, Dark Owl versus GTRX. Both are extremely close in performance. GTRX splitter does provide better downforce and sticks to the walls and ceiling a little bit more effectively. But Dark Owl setup is less fragile and has better aerodynamics while in the air. Wulp, who was the one to implement it, argues that the Dark Owl is the better option for tracks with skips or courses that isn't pure asphalt. But no extensive testing has been done, so for now it's still up in the air. Maybe we will have the answer in the future. I said the Scintilla is a jack of all trades. So what else can it do perfectly? Well, with its insane tuning potential, rally maps are practically a joke to any capable driver. In the hands of Haiku, the Scintilla becomes a beast. Watching Haiku drive, it feels like he's playing with increased gravity. It's just that smooth. But not everything is perfect. Its subframe is pretty low, which means that when the terrain gets rougher, the Scintilla struggles. The car's fragility starts to show, and in those cases, the FCV Vivace takes the lead. The Vivace's ability to handle tough rally maps make it the better choice on those brutal tracks. So while the Scintilla is great for almost everything, it still has its weaknesses when it comes to rough, uneven surfaces with small rocks. The Scintilla, Vivace and Rockbusher are the most basic meta vehicles you could think of. What about more unique variants? Well, about a year ago, something crazy started catching fire. Rocket vehicles. Now, I've covered rocket vehicles pretty extensively in my previous video, so I will keep it brief this time. The MT series and D series are the main vehicles used for speedrunning setups with rockets. But these cars come with their own issues, low fuel volume and difficulty controlling the car when the jet is firing. But none of that matters when you can hit 300 miles per hour in the blink of an eye. Of course, these are mostly used for drag racing or simple maps that don't require a lot of turning. The idea is simple: strap a rocket onto a car and then, well, anything goes. It's madness, but here is the funny part. Every single variant has its purpose, from drag racing to straight up high speed racing. These rocket powered beasts get the job done. And then there is the evolution of bus routes. They have changed a lot over the years, and the current meta is as follows. Remove everything that can be removed, slap on some nitro and a jet, and just pray you don't burn through all your fuel on the first straightaway. It's all about that boost after the stop. You need to make sure you've got enough fuel left to keep the momentum going after the initial burst. It's as much about skill as it is about the setup, because if you mismanage that fuel, you're going nowhere fast. Now that we are mostly done with the vehicles, let's talk about the unique game mod metas. Lightrunner and reversing time trials. Let's start with Lightrunner. It's divided into two versions: the standard mode, where you use a preset car, and the time trial mode, where you can choose your own vehicle. The time trial version gets particularly interesting, especially on the nosedive map. This map doesn't just look unique, it led to the discovery of one-of-a-kind meta for car tuning specific to it. But before the unique meta was discovered, the usual strategy was just to clutch it through the downhill to build up speed. But eventually, players realized that cars with super long gearing could accelerate down the entire slope, maintaining speed much more efficiently than before. It's still a niche strategy, but for this particular time trial, this is the meta now. If you are aiming for top tier time, this is a setup you'll want to use. Let's talk about reversing time trials. This mostly happens on the grid map and track editor maps. Since rules allow to reverse maps, this opens up certain shortcuts. I already explored many of these in my Trackmania like skips video, So if you are curious, go ahead and check that out. But to sum it up, by driving in reverse, you open up massive jumps to the finish. These jumps are hard to perform, no doubt about that, but they save so much time that they are absolutely essential if you want to beat long-standing records from players like Vulp or Haiku. Reversing driving is no longer just a gimmick, it's a core part of the strategy for tackling these maps. BeamNG's meta is truly one of a kind. With every update, every new vehicle and every discovery made by players, the meta shifts like the gears of a perfectly tuned car. Whether it's the Scintilla dominating high-speed races, the Vivace mastering rally maps, or even rocket-fueled chaos breaking records in unimaginable ways, the speedrunning meta in BeamNG never stops evolving. And that's what makes it so exciting. Players aren't just following the meta, they're creating it, breaking it, and redefining what it means to be the best. Who knows what the next big shift will be? Maybe we will finally get an F1 car in the game, and the whole meta will be flipped on its head. A huge thanks to Haiku, Vulp and Skill for their help with this video. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more, and I'll see you all in the next one.